Hello, and welcome to the All Kinds of Minds podcast, where we talk about various inclusion tips and ways that we can be inclusive for all kinds of minds. I am so excited to have our guest today. His name is Mark Pfaff, and Mark Pfaff is a director of special education and the Captain Regional Implementation Lead. He is an accomplished education specialist with a strong focus on evidence-based practices in the field of special education. With over 18 years of experience, Mark has dedicated his career to enhancing the learning experiences of students with diverse needs. Mark's expertise lies in the implementation of evidence-based practices through the CAPTAIN framework, and CAPTAIN, which stands for the California Autism Professional Training and Information Network, is a statewide initiative aimed at providing educators and families with the knowledge and tools to effectively support individuals with autism spectrum disorder and related disabilities. Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yay! All right. Well, I know that there's a lot of knowledge for you to give, and I know that folks are going to be really excited to hear what you have to say. So we will jump into some questions. So first of all, you have a super impressive bio. I would love to learn, what was your career path and what drove you to focus on special education?
So I grew up in the Air Force as a dependent. My dad was stationed in Korea. He was stationed in San Bernardino, and then he was also stationed in Germany. In Germany, I had some wonderful teachers and some not so wonderful teachers. And the wonderful ones were the ones that made me to think like, hey, I want to do this, right? I want to affect kids the way they affected me. So everything I did for that from that day forward, from that time forward, was to get into a place where I was helping and teaching and instructing and doing all that. So from babysitting to teaching swim lessons to CPR, first aid, camp counseling, all that stuff. I knew I wanted to be a teacher since the fourth grade. Went to Chico State, and at Chico State, I was able to take some classes that gave me information that made me realize that the people that I were friends with had extra support. And those people were in our classrooms, and I never saw it that way. They were my friends. Getting that extra support, I was like, if I'm going to be a teacher, I have to be a teacher for everybody. So I was able to get through a credential program that allowed me to get my multiple subject and my special ed credential. And from there, I got my moderate severe, but now it's called extensive needs credential, and then became a program specialist and now an administrator for an extensive needs program, DHH, deaf of hard of hearing, and speech. So that got me going.
Wow, that is super cool and like a very international and multifaceted kind of way to get there. And also in a way where you're just like the thread that's moving everything along is that you're always out here trying to help and teach, which is
Absolutely.
really cool.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I guess now, you're now in this role as an
Right.
administrator. And so I would love to learn a little bit more about what the responsibility is of an administrator when it comes to supporting neurodivergent students and staff.
As an administrator, there's really, you're kind of seen as this policy enforcer, this person that makes sure that things get done and people are held accountable and things like that, right? So the technical answer is that I'm a part of an IEP team, or I'm a part of a team that helps to support a student. And I need to make sure that anybody that's part of that team is connected to training, resources, encouraged to participate, and knows how to communicate with each other effectively and efficiently. The other part of it, you're also in that space. You're also working and making sure that there's a correct offer of FAPE, and you as the administrator, along with the parent, agree that this is what we're going to do. And as the administrator, you have to provide those resources. The other part is you just have to build relationships. You have to understand that you have to be creative in the environment that you have. There are some limitations and some things that the system kind of does for the all, right, for the most. And some of the students that we work with need more than what most do. So the idea is that we have to create an environment and also not only share it, but live it every day. Use the language, you be that
Mm,
leader that kind of gets those people to understand, hey, this is good for all kids. It's not just for one.
yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, sort of being an advocate, which requires a lot of that creativity to get over
Absolutely.
various barriers.
Yes.
And I guess that also leads me to my next question, which is kind of what are those barriers to inclusion that you've encountered in districts, and how have you dealt with them? I'd love some, like, more specific examples. That'd be so cool to hear.
Yeah, some of the barriers are just policies that limit or have an expectation of student behavior, and and
Mm,
and understanding that there are some things that people need more of, and some people need less of. So this idea of like being fair and also being uh, equitable, two different things that are going to be
mm,
fair and equitable. So a barrier would be they have to start at a certain time. A barrier would be they can't leave until the end of school. A barrier would be they have to sit down in the lunchroom. A barrier would be any kind of systems piece that has historically just been the way we've done it and being stuck in that space because that's what people know. And so a barrier is change, being uncomfortable with change, unable to be creative because there is change, and all the various personalities that come with um, caring so much about students and wanting to support them all and seeing that there's a different way to approach it. So it really is a people mindset barrier because systems can be changed with the right mindsets.
very cool. And I guess I'm also really intrigued by this idea of, yeah, this is the way it's always been, because we know that that's pretty prevalent
Yeah.
within districts. Was there an instance where you kind of realized, like, maybe there's a way to get outside of, like, the way it's always been?
Yeah.
Um,
So there was a point in my teaching career where we were, my teammate who was another special education teacher at a middle school level. We were faced with this obstacle as a school. That we were
mhm,
running out of classrooms, right? We weren't building them
mm,
fast enough. The area was growing, so we were running out of classrooms. So being the what they called an SDC, or that place where the students go that get more support, right? Which
mhm,
I want to say, make sure that people understand it is a service. It is things that we do for kids. It's not a place we put kids. So
mm.
we were in this space where we're like, hey, we're going to give up our classroom. You need a classroom. Here's the classroom. Now we need to go to a place, so we're going to go to your classroom. And we were going into classrooms. We were the support staff that we had was able to go to a different classroom. We were putting ourselves in a position to be able to do the work that we wanted to do, but in a creative way, and where the system really needed us to be flexible. We said, hey, take our class.
Oh,
We're going to go into others.
whoa, that's really cool. You were, like, being very, like, physically creative with that too.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
And I guess pivoting kind of, because you were talking about your teaching career, and
Mhm.
at that point, what is the role of teachers in supporting neurodivergent students? Since we already talked about the role of admins.
Administrators have so many other things that they have to do, and so
Mm,
many other people they support. A teacher is essentially an administrator for that student. They are the ones
mm,
that have team members. If they're the case manager, they're the ones that have access to team members to make sure that the services and things that are going well, or how they can provide resources and things like, and ask for resources. So a teacher is that coach on the field, and they are the ones that are
mm.
directing the people on how to do the play, right? So that really is kind of that teacher. They really have a lot of the admin kind of support needs that they need for the student. But there's another level when you need to get resources. Not all teachers have access to resources. they're the ones that help connect families to service providers. They're the ones that make
Mm,
sure that the communication is being effective and efficient, and that there is someone who is the go-to for a student that needs extra support.
makes sense. Awesome. And then also talking about sort of that teaching career where you were there, I would love to learn about a time where you learned about better ways to support your neurodivergent students. Do you have any stories about that?
Yeah. So I learned from kids. Kids teach
Mhm,
me so much, and I had my own kids. They made me a better parent. Being a teacher made me a better teacher. A
mm,
person being a teacher for all students made me a better teacher overall. I've been able to
mm,
communicate and share information with other teachers to help them also do that. So what I learned is that it's not just you. You can't do it by yourself, right? It has to
mhm,
be a group of people supporting a person or a group of people, right? You can't just do it all by
yeah,
yourself. So an admin can't do it by themselves. A service provider, whatever they are doing, providing service, they can't do it by themselves. The parent can't do it by themselves. They don't have to. We have a team aspect to it. So that's the thing that I've learned over time. That there the best way to support is to create a team around the person or need, um, to be most effective.
mm. That makes total sense. And I remember in our podcast pre-call that you were talking about, actually a certain student
Hmm.
that ended up growing up to be quite
Yeah.
successful, and how, yeah, they helped you become a better person. I would love to, yeah, hear about that.
Jillian Schmeltzer. She's in a class now. She's working in a classroom, working with
Oh,
kids.
cool.
Um, she is somebody who is an author. She is an amazing human being, and one of the things I have learned about neurodivergent people is that there is so much that we don't know and that we
Mm,
could benefit from if we just took the time to understand.
mhm.
And she wrote, she made me this little thing back here. It's puzzle pieces that look like a ribbon, and then
Oh, cool.
on that are just all these words that she thought about herself, and then she thought about me. So that's huge, right? To be able to connect with kids to where they can see themselves, put words to it, and then also identify things about you and put words to it and put them down and share it, right? So she did one of the things that we learned about her is she was an amazing writer. And when I met her, she was in the sixth
Mm.
grade. She ended up writing this book, Blossoming
Oh,
Autism.
very cool.
And it says my life in with autism and 16 things I wish people knew. So at the
Oh.
beginning of each chapter, there's a little something, and one of the one of the things that kind of helped me with a barrier of inclusion, but also
Mm,
helping the student. During the time I became from a teacher role, I became the vice principal at the same school. So my
mm,
role was a little different, um, and so Jillian, in the book, I wanted to read a little bit. It says,
yeah.
Miss Bishop, who is my other teacher partner, and Mr. Pfaff as my teachers, I felt understood in different ways. My autism was understood, and I had never felt experienced that before. They both used to explain things to me in a way that helped me start to learn how to understand myself and what it was that I was dealing with. They thought I was funny when I was not trying to be funny. They saw the good in me when a lot of people I worked with saw behavior problems or annoyances. Another thing they've always done, though it is, though it's tell me like it is. They seem to know when I can do better, and they have always given me the push to do better. I think that they live by the mindset, oh, you don't want to do that? Let's go and try it now. But that's what it was. I needed a lot of ways, even if it didn't like it at the time. So she was able to take this information and write it down, and the power of words for her was that way to connect. Because it
Mm.
wasn't the questions and answering the questions for the people that were asking the questions, like what's wrong, and right, she was able to have it in her head, she just wasn't able to get it out in the words that people wanted to understand. So we found that writing was a way for her to do better, for herself, to help herself be understood. So I thought that was a pretty amazing piece out of her book. And going
Yeah.
along with that, she's like, "You guys always overestimate me." And and Ms. Bishop says, "I will always overestimate your abilities, always." So again, having a team that could pull together, creating space to allow a person that is struggling to use their power and their strength and their abilities to actually get to where they want to go. So she went to college, she did all of this stuff, and she's now working in the classrooms.
Wow. That is such a
Huge.
cool story, and also how awesome to just, like, have that impact in that kind of relationship
Yeah.
with, like, a former student.
Right. Yeah.
That is so awesome, and, like, congrats to her, and we'll definitely, link her if her book is, available,
Yeah.
we would love
Hmm.
to,
It
we'll link
is.
it in the show notes and everything
It
as
is.
well. Um, that is so awesome. So it seems like that working with Jillian, for example, really took a lot of creativity. It took, seeing that they're
Yeah.
seeing past that this is the way things have always been and seeing that there are a lot of alternative forms of communication and expression
Yeah, like we've seen in
that
past podcasts, and is that they're in the webinars that you put on. I watched one where they were talking about the of neurodivergent affirming practices, like being able
yeah.
to see the strength and versus the deficit. I mean, that's huge. That's huge, but it's a mind shift, a mindset shift. So that's the beast where administrators have the hard part, is that mindset shift. And how do we get what we have currently supporting students that need the support? So Jillian, she would always come to school late because she just had a
Mm,
hard time coming to school at the beginning of the
mhm,
day. It was getting prepped for a day that you didn't know what to expect, right?
yeah.
How just overwhelming could that be, right? And we have to understand that it can be overwhelming. Sometimes we don't want to get out of bed, right? But we do, right? Some of us can't get out of bed, right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole spectrum of how people are going to respond. So what we did when I became the vice principal at that site, I had certain abilities that I didn't have before. And one of them
Mm.
was that we said, hey, you're going to come in first thing and you're going to go to Miss Bishop's room for PE. That's going to give you time to, get the energy out, find ways to do that in a positive way. We got to give them options, right? But we got to give them
Mhm.
positive options. People, anybody, right? And then, um, and then the next period was me as the principal. She was my aide, office aide. So she would have to go to a classroom and bring slips to people. Why did we
Mm.
do this? Well, we knew that she had trouble walking to a class late, right? But this was her job now. She was allowed to, she was supposed to, right? So we created a space
Oh.
to really prove that, you can do this. This is your job, and the fact that you're a rule follower, and this is your job description, all of this is what you got to do. And she was started walking into classrooms, and it was okay that people started looking at her because they were supposed to, right? They're
Yeah,
coming
that's her
in, they're
job.
supposed to greet you, they're supposed to do that. So creating that space, but being creative, um, and allowing students to, have a way to struggle, but also have a way to know that they are supported and that there's a reason for it.
Yeah, it sounded like that this role was a way to give her a lot of agency and control in kind of an analogous
Yeah,
situation, that would just, like, reframe kind of that anxiety for her,
right.
which that's
Yeah.
awesome. Very cool. So, you were also talking a little bit about that mindset shift, right? And so, how can either other administrators or teachers advocate to admins about, you know, creating more of this mindset shift? How can they kind of convince them to uh, go towards better support and inclusion practices for neurodivergent students or to be creative, like you were talking about?
you have to have more understanding of the situation. You have to
Mhm.
have understandings of the fact that neurodivergence is something that a lot of us work through and
Mhm.
work with and work around. It's not just a thing that's placed in one space. So we have to know it's at the auto shop, it's at the grocery store, it's at the mall, and being able to empathize, and people think empathy, and Brene Brown has that great thing about empathy. They have a little
Mhm.
video on empathy, and it's one of those ways you gotta connect, you gotta get to the understanding that is another point of view, and that point of view is just as valid and is just as important. And we need to figure out, if our system doesn't have a way to support that, how do we get that going? Is it through training? Is it through creating a team that meets? People like to meet all the time. People like to have meetings and meetings and meetings. Sometimes that's just overwhelming, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just little bits here and there, right? That's why the work that we do in schools, and specifically through Captain, is really getting an understanding of how do we adjust our mindsets with skill, because skill is one of those pieces, right? We need to
Yes.
build that skill and understanding, and build a common definition of what it is that we truly are expecting. To expect kids to be respectful is to say there are a million things, because respect is so many different things to so many different people, right? How can you label one thing for a kid to try to do when developmentally they're still struggling with understanding these things? And then when you
Mhm.
throw other aspects of their life, and that's outside of the educational system, and then even those social things inside the educational system, it really does take a lot of time. So
Yeah.
there's nothing that really kind of works unless you're going to want to put the time in, and truly can empathize and connect with those people who are struggling in a system that is where they have to be. There's not a choice. Like, well, there is a choice where you go to school, but you have to go to school, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's through private school, home school, charters, public school, whatever it may be, you still have to go to school. And understanding how to do that for all kids is takes time, and it takes a lot of training and practice, and again, a group of people to really make that happen.
100%. And you also, in perfect timing, mentioned Captain. So, can you tell us a little bit more about Captain and about, how you got involved? And then I have a couple of specific questions about that for you after.
Yeah, yeah. So I learned about Captain when I first came to Tehama County, and it was really sad when I learned about it, because I was like, why didn't I have this before?
Oh,
But as a teacher, but I came to Tehama County as administrator, and one of our positions, or one of our responsibilities as a program specialist, was to be a part of Captain. Um,
mm,
and that was something that the system had supported, right? There's this thing out there that's supporting people in autism evidence based practices and getting information out to people. We should be doing that. So SELPAs throughout California are part of this organization. It's a multidisciplinary, so we have SELPAs involved, we have school districts involved, we have far northern regional centers, or far regional centers involved. We have family resources involved. We have uh, post-secondary school, like colleges involved. We have this group of people that is coming together, this multi-agency network coming together to talk about how do we get this information out. And the idea is that we not only disseminate this information, but we also um, implement the trainings and to fidelity. Uh, so that's the thing that I do for work. It's one of the things that I do. And it's one of the things that actually accentuates a lot of the things that we're doing in education, whether it's PBIS, positive behavior intervention supports, whether it's MTSS, multi-tier system supports, um, whether it's working with other initiatives that are coming out. Kids benefit from the work because it's evidence based. It is focused
Mhm.
on the fact that it has worked. It's shown to work. It's proven to work, and it's consistently proven to work. So we can say that it's evidence based.
Yeah, for sure. And when you were talking about disseminating information, I was like, you are in particular doing a great job at that because we actually met at the California MTSS
Yeah.
conference,
Mm-hmm.
and you as an admin were just out here boothing. We were boothing buddies in the same like neighboring
Yeah,
corners, and you had just yeah, you had like this slew of resources, and folks were flocking to you all the time, and I understand why, because I checked out some of these resources, and they're just so valuable
right.
and,
And you can
just
get
so
them. They're all
awesome.
free. There's
Yeah.
nothing that costs money. And even now, over the past 5 years, so you said at the beginning that I'm the regional implementation lead. I'm a regional
Mhm,
implementation lead. There's multiple
mm,
regional implementation leads throughout California, throughout the SELPAs. And we work together as a group, but we formed about 5 years ago, well, 6 years ago now, for to be able to do a grant, and that grant was to fulfill this goal of creating spaces that were educationally run,
mhm,
and being able to call those demonstration sites. And in order to do that, we have to show that evidence-based practices are being performed successfully to fidelity in those spaces and assess that information. So not only provide the
mm,
training, but assess that these are happening, and then people can come into these areas and do that. We have things like in Marin County, North Monterey County, Lancaster, Silver Valley, Roseville, Fresno, Santa Maria, Bonita. A lot of different school districts. We have these places, and people can go online and find that information for free. And the training too. All the evidence-based practices that we talk about are on our website and linked to another website that actually provides modules and trainings for anyone that wants to know. So, how empowering is this for a parent who is just learning, like, hey, I have this diagnosis. What do I
mhm.
know about helping support this my child that I want? That's my job, right? Um, you can go on and not rely on outside sources that you have to learn to trust, right? You can look at this evidence-based practices. It's all there. It's all trustworthy because it's evidence-based. There's all the information about how it became evidence-based, what they did to make it evidence-based, and then you learn about it through modules that are like 1.5 to 2 hours long, and you can also get some credits for it too. So that's pretty
Oh,
cool.
cool. Yeah, and I think, I've also even sent some of these resources, like the one pager kinda stuff, to folks outside of
Yeah,
California, and it's been, it's been super helpful, and I think the resource that I found super helpful and useful was, there's one on the intersection of autism and MTSS, and I've had admins all over be like, "I want that too."
yeah,
And so I guess that brings me to my next question of, can you give me an example of how you've used any practices in the Captain framework to change practices in your district? Are there particular resources that have
yeah.
really helped you within it?
Yeah, so one of the wonderful opportunities that we got as a becoming a regional implementation lead is to
Mhm.
be trained in what they call the APERS. It's the Program Environmental Rating Scale. And if you go on
Ooh,
the CAPTAIN.ca.gov website, you can find a self-assessment using the APERS. And basically, what it is you go in and you look at all of these various components to an environment, and you assess through a point system where you have like a basic rubric, and you're like, okay, let's start in the middle. No, we don't meet all those. Let's go back one. Okay, that's one.
mhm,
Let's start in the middle. Oh, we meet all of these. Let's go to the next level. Oh, we meet some of these. Okay, that's a 4 or that's a 5, right? Whatever. So without getting into too much of what that does, what the actual how you actually do the procedure, but you get then a very clear picture of where your strengths lie, whether it's
mm,
parent training, whether it's teaming, whether it's safety, those kinds of things, or communication, all those things. You get a good understanding of where you have strengths and then areas where you can grow. And some of these areas are so winnable, like quick, easy
Yeah.
wins, right? So when you go through this assessment, it shows you an area, and then that area is where you say, okay, for this area, this evidence-based practice will benefit this area. So let's train the team in this evidence-based practice. It's not just the training, because that's the dissemination of the information. And
Hmm.
as we know in PD, there's research behind this. You're not going to get the most out of a professional development if you don't have follow-up training or coaching going on, right?
Yeah.
So it just becomes, everybody leaves it up training excited. Yes, let's do this, and it starts fizzling out, right? That's that
Yeah.
part that us as regional implementation leads, we want to make sure doesn't happen. We want that implementation. So we use implementation and improvement science to make that work. And so with the combination of the assessment, the trainings, the improvement and implementation science, and mindsets and teams, all of that stuff starts to show that there's going to be success for students in the classroom. And it's not just benefiting neurodivergent students, it is benefiting all students and teachers.
Most definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Very cool. Well, I guess I have just one last question for you. If there is one thing that teachers or administrators or both could do to improve inclusion practices, and if you could wave a magic wand and make sure all of them do this, uh, what is that thing?
Use the training, use the resources that you're provided. Use those things, get knowledgeable about them. Even if it's just you starting it off, somebody needs to start it. Somebody needs to start
Mhm.
the actual use of these resources, and reaching out to cadre members within their area. And if you don't know who that is, you can go onto the website. There's a cadre list, and you can see what cadre matches your space. It's all on that website. It really does show you how we're split up, and we do use the same regions as the county superintendents use for how they separate their regions. I'm up in Region 1 and 2. That's the northern part over to the left, over to the coast, all the way up to the Oregon border. Um, this is the stuff that I have my paras and people train in. That's some of the
Mhm.
goals. This PD, you're going to learn at least 3 evidence-based practices, and then we're going to implement those things in the classroom. Use the
Fabulous.
resources,
Awesome.
access them. Use this. Watch this.
Yeah.
Watch it again.
That's huge. Yeah, for sure. And so to find those resources, what's the website? What are the links? Where can we
Yeah,
find
yeah.
that stuff?
So Captain is really easy to remember, but then it's .ca like California, .gov
Mhm.
like gov. So Captain.ca.gov. Once you get on that website, you will get lost in it um, if you have some some difficulties in focusing, attending to a specific task, because it can be something where you click a button and you're like, oh, I want to look at this. Oh, I want to look at this, and you get lost in a rabbit hole. So just be careful in that way. But if you want, just go on that website, and then on the website, there on the very bottom of the page, there's QR codes or links, not QR codes. There's links to Facebook, YouTube. YouTube has a lot of great resources where they're doing echoes, and those are when there's panels of people, parents and professionals, and they're talking about a topic, just kind of like what we're doing. And then there's Facebook and Instagram. So all those things are there for you to kind of look at and just start exposing yourself to in a way that you can start understanding what resources you have and then who to get them to. Just even if it's just a family member outside. I have friends because of the military. I have friends outside of California teaching also, in
Mhm.
Florida, in Arkansas, in a lot of different places. And I'm like, hey, check this out. It's on the internet. It's free.
Exactly. Yeah, and if you're watching us on YouTube, you can literally just
Yeah,
type it in the search bar and
exactly.
you're already here. So,
Exactly.
might as
Evidence-based
well.
practices. When you see EBPs, that's what they're talking
Mhm.
about. So some of the titles or things are called Captain EBP. So
Okay.
evidence-based practice. Just so you're searching for it, and you're like, "What? He lied? No, I didn't lie.
It's right there.
It's right there."
Oh, yeah, very good clarification. That is perfect. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for joining me on this podcast and just telling us all of your great knowledge and
Well,
stories.
thank you for inviting me. I really do appreciate the time to be able to share this information.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone else for watching and for tuning in to us. If you want to share the All Kinds of Minds podcast, we would really appreciate it. I will also have all of the Jillian's book in the show notes, as well as the Captain resources, so you can check those out in the description. But until next time, thank you for joining All Kinds of Minds. Have a great one.